Work expands as to fill the time available for its completion. So what does that mean exactly? Well, let's use the classic 9 to 5 for an example, right? A lot of people in the world work 9 to 5, 8 hours a day. They have their task that they need to complete throughout the day, and then they go home. But reality is that we may have 10 tasks that we need to do a day, or we might have 2 tasks that we need to do in a certain given day, right? The thing is, since we work 8 hours a day, what we typically do is we expand the work, we make it more complex to fill 8 hours. There's a couple of reasons behind that, right? One is because, like I said, if you complete your work early, it's not like you can just leave, right? Because you're beholden to your boss's expectations of you being there, being present. If your boss were to come to you and say, hey, if you can complete your work in 3 hours, then you can go home, your mindset would automatically change. Instead of dragging your task to fill 8 hours, you would look at your task and be like, okay, how do I get this done in 3 hours? Just like taxes, right? If the government slaps an 80% tax rate on all Americans, you figure it out. Like, you make it happen. It doesn't really matter what the tax rate is. Another example would be the 7-month paper versus the 7-hour paper. If I say, hey, I need you to complete this paper in 7 months, it adds to the complexity. Whether it's about Little Red Riding Hood or it's about neuroscience, it doesn't really matter. If I give you 7 months to complete a task, you might allocate 1 month towards traveling to talk to certain people about the project. It might take a month for editing. Whereas if I say, hey, I need you to complete this in 7 hours, you're gonna say, okay, what do I need to have in this to be successful, for it to pass, whatever the case may be? What's the bare minimum I can do for grammar to make sure that it doesn't sound too crazy to get it done? The paper doesn't change. The way you look at it, the perspective changes. With most things, we can apply this to. When it comes to myself, I even have a personal example. I want to provide value to you. I want to be creative and just talk about different things. I have my podcast. I talk to people. I like to learn about their perspective on life and different projects and different things. With my own studio right here, I want the best lighting. I want the best audio. I want the best camera. I want the best things, right? I want the nice things. If I focus too much about what I want at the end or towards the end or that next big goal, then it's going to be less likely that I can actually get to that spot. I have the equipment to do what I need to do now. Now, if I continue to provide value and I continue to level up in my own life and hit these short-term goals, right, then that return on investment might allow me to reach that goal that I eventually want. But if I hone in too much on the long term, it's going to be a lot harder for me to get there than if I make actionable steps along the way, one video at a time, one piece of information at a time. So now to the 2 things that you can do to manage your time, to become ruthless when it comes to time management, is asking yourself a couple of questions. Here's the first question I think is very helpful. First, you need to analyze every action or task that you do in a day or a month or week, whatever the case may be, and ask yourself, am I including this task to fill a constraint? Like I mentioned, when it comes to a 9 to 5 job, yeah, sometimes you stretch completing, approving bills or making phone calls. You stagger it out over hour increments to make sure that by the time 8 hours is complete or comes to an end, that you had completed all those tasks. Whereas in reality, maybe you could have got all those phone calls done in 30 minutes. This one takes a lot of self-honesty, right? You need to look at yourself and ask yourself, am I really being the most efficient that I can be when it comes to this task, or am I stretching it out to fill a constraint that's arbitrary? Once you can answer that honestly, then you can start to make adjustments. You can try to cut the time that it takes to do the certain task by half or even 1/10 of the time. That's up to you, but first you need to be honest and ask yourself, what am I doing? Am I really being efficient? Am I just doing this to fill time? And move forward from there. The second question that you need to ask is, can I eliminate this task completely and still achieve the goal that I'm trying to reach? Again, this takes self-honesty, self-reflection, but I think it's really important to get to that next level. The best example I can think of is when you're working in a professional environment and there's a lot of networking events. Networking events are super popular, right? Because you go there, people have done it, you network, you build your network, and you get to build word of mouth, right? here's the thing about networking events. They might be perfect for, well, before I even get into that, they might be perfect for some people, right? And they might have had a lot of success. You go to a physical location, the time it takes you to travel to get to that place, the time spent at that particular place, ultimate result of, did you get a lead or whatever, is the real return on investment. Now, some investments might take some time, might take years, right? You need to build that trust. You need to build that story and provide information on the value that you're able to provide to people, right? I understand all that. You also need to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, am I doing this because this is part of the picture that most professionals in this setting do? Or am I doing this because there's actual return on investment? That you might be better off, providing content online and, building your network in that fashion. That way it continues to return on investment. You continue to provide that story without tying yourself to an hour or to that travel or to a certain location. So all in all, you just need to be ruthless when it comes to analyzing the things that you do in a day, because sometimes it's easy to get caught in a cycle or routine that fits, the social constraints that we're used to. So those are the two ways that I think that you can really maximize your time, master your time management, and basically just become more efficient when it comes to reaching your goals and just living a better life. The reality is, if you're able to master these things and shorten your day to 2 hours, you have more time to work on other things that provide passive income, that allow you to have more time with your kids. Whatever your goal is, you're able to do that. So at the end of the day, we're all trying to do that. And so if you sometimes stop, self-reflect, you can break that cycle and you can start to make new gains in your life. Parkinson's law. Work expands as to fill time available for its completion. Again, reflect on what you're doing. Make sure you're not stretching a task that can be done in 10 minutes to 2 hours just because you need to fill time. Make sure that you're being self-critical about what you're doing so that way you can be the best version of yourself and you have more time to do the things that you actually love.